Have you ever asked an AI to build a specific feature or maybe write up a professional report only to get back something that completely misses the mark? Maybe it uses the exact wrong coding language, or it writes in this super casual bloggy style instead of the crisp academic tone you actually needed. The AI made reasonable guesses, sure, but those guesses were absolutely wrong for your specific standards. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to fix that exact problem. We're diving into how you can build a definitive coordinate system for your AI workers using something called a project constitution.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today to help you eliminate those frustrating, guess-based, vibe coding failures. We'll cover what a constitution actually is, global versus project levels, exactly what goes inside that CLAUDE.md file, timing and multi-agent governance, and finally, we'll walk through a real-world CTO report example.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1. What is a constitution, and why is it the missing piece in spec-driven development?
So if you're using Spec-Driven Development, or SDD, you're used to writing a specification to tell your AI what to build, right? You define the features, the data models, the user flows, but here's the catch. A spec does not tell the AI how you always build things. That is exactly the job of the project constitution. Think of the constitution as a plain CLAUDE.md file just sitting right there at the root of your project. It's essentially your project's structural DNA. It captures the immutable, non-negotiable principles that govern your work across every single session and every single task. To put it, if your spec is describing the different rooms inside a house, your constitution is the strict building code that every single wall absolutely must meet.
Moving right along to Section 2, Global versus Project Levels, and how we handle multi-tiered governance.
Claude Code actually supports foundational rules at two composing levels. Up top, you've got your global constitution. This lives in your home directory, and it applies to literally every project you touch. It holds your universal standards. We're talking your preferred code style, how you prefer the AI to ask clarifying questions, or strict zero-exception security rules. Then, beneath that is your project constitution. This one lives in a specific repository and travels with your code. It handles the highly specific tech stack, architecture, and naming conventions for that exact project. And the real beauty of this system? Your project principles will automatically extend and even override your global standards anytime there's a conflict.
Let's dive into Section 3, inside the Claude.md file. What does the anatomy of this thing actually look like?
A solid constitution usually covers these 5 core pillars. You have architecture principles, which dictate structural rules like how your services communicate. You have technology constraints, which are crucial. They lock in your choices so the AI doesn't conveniently decide to use SQLite when your standard is strictly PostgreSQL. Then you have code quality standards for things like strict type safety, security requirements to ensure input validation at every boundary, and workflow rules that dictate exactly how the AI should collaborate with you. Now listen closely, because what is not on this list is just as important. Features, user stories, and business logic absolutely do not belong in your constitution. Leave those in your specs. The constitution is purely for the laws of your development environment.
And since this constitution is basically just a plain markdown file written in natural language, you should always include the reasoning behind your rules. You see, Claude can easily follow a rule it doesn't quite understand. But if you take a moment to include the why, the actual intent behind your standard, you empower the AI to correctly apply that principle to weird, unforeseen edge cases that you couldn't have possibly anticipated when you wrote the file.
Section 4, Timing and Governance. When is the right time to actually write these rules down?
Timing is literally everything here. Take a look at this sequence. You need to write the constitution before Phase 1 research even begins, and way before you write a single specification. Why? Because the constitution defines your coordinate system. It places a hard boundary around what good looks like before the AI even starts brainstorming or exploring ideas. If you don't have these guardrails in place during the research phase, your AI might suggest architectural patterns that completely violate your core standards. And honestly, you probably wouldn't catch it until it's way too late.
This timing becomes incredibly vital the moment you scale up to using multiple AI subagents. Without a constitution, parallel subagents are gonna clash. You might have one using async patterns and another happily writing callbacks. Both are technically correct in a vacuum, but together, they create a massive, inconsistent, tangled codebase. But when you have a Claude.md file, both agents read the exact same rules before they start typing. That consistency is guaranteed by their shared DNA without those agents ever needing to communicate with one another. It's practically magic.
Now, of course, standards evolve. That's natural, but there is a golden rule for maintaining this document: change the Constitution before you change the code. If you're halfway through a task and you realize a constitutional principle needs tweaking, do not change the rules while the game is in progress. Finish your current task under the old rules, update your CLAUDE.md file, and then let your next session inherit those shiny new standards.
Finally, Section 5. Let's ground all of this theory with a really practical example: building a research report for CTOs.
To do this right, we need to make a massive mental shift. Instead of relying on your implicit standards, the things you only catch and fix after the AI hands you a terrible draft, we want explicit principles. Relying on implicit standards just forces you into this painful, endless cycle of revising and reprompting. By pulling those hidden assumptions out of your head and turning them into explicit principles within your constitution, you create strict boundaries that the AI simply will not violate during its very first generation.
So, let's say you're writing a report on personal AI employees in 2026. Notice how your implicit desires turn into rock-solid rules here. For this report, we explicitly demand that all claims are cited with sources. We establish a strict no speculation rule, meaning only documented capabilities make the cut. We lock in the structure: executive summary, analysis, recommendations, and an appendix. We specify that the audience is CTOs, which guarantees a precise, direct tone with absolutely zero marketing fluff. And we bound the length strictly by the spec. The absolute best part of this? Any spec you write in the future is going to automatically inherit these exact principles. That no speculation rule that usually causes a frustrating revision, it's now a baseline standard Claude just naturally obeys on draft number 1.
Setting up a CLAUDE.md file completely changes how you interact with AI. It moves you away from constantly reacting to mistakes and puts you in the driver's seat where you're actively architecting success. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on for your own projects today. What implicit assumptions are quietly sabotaging your AI outputs right now? What are those little things you constantly find yourself correcting over and over? Figure out what they are, write them down, put them in a CLAUDE.md file, and take back control of your AI workflow. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building!